Spiel. Oh, hi, I'm Caroline Leavitt. I'm the co-founder of A Mighty Blaze, the book initiative that was started during the pandemic to help authors, independent bookstores, and readers make it through. And today is really, really special because it's the Blaze meeting the Blaze. We have one of my favorite people here, Rachel Barenbaum, and she is the host and producer of Debut Darlings. And also, I have to talk about this book, Atomic Anna. It is, first of all, it's just burning up everywhere because it's so great. It got 2-starred reviews so far, one from Kirkus, who usually hates everything. And Kirkus said an incredible achievement, as ambitious as a Greek tragedy, and just as lyrical and unflinching. It's got a starred Publishers Weekly, which says multi-dimensional, splendidly crafted. NPR says Rachel Barenbaum's latest novel is about Chernobyl, yes, but also about comic books, the power of math, finding one's truth in love, both biological and found. The novel is masterfully plotted. And in the most recent rave from the New York Times, it says this novel triples down on the author's ability to see history through the lens of the fantastic, as much as the humans to go like her characters beyond what logic dictates. It's a leap. And she lands it. So let's talk a little bit about Rachel before
Caroline, thank you. Oh my God, that was the best introduction
I have to
of my
say
life.
that before when we were in the green room, I was telling Rachel how when this book came out, I looked at it and I felt so jealous because I thought, oh my God, I wish I could write something that great. And then she told me about the book she's writing now, and I thought, oh damn, what didn't I think about that?
But
So
then
anyway.
I said, how could you be jealous? Because you are the most amazing writer out there. I'm the one who's jealous. Caroline has been nothing but a fantastic mentor. She is an amazing, amazing writer who inspires me and so many other people. And it is such an honor to be on the show with you, to be part of the Blaze with you, to be in your light. Really, I wouldn't be here without you. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's give a little background on Rachel, and then we'll talk. I'm dying to talk about this book. Rachel's debut, A Bend in the Stars, was a New York Times summer reading selection, a Barnes & Noble Discover, great new writers. It's a Boston Globe bestseller. Her work has appeared in the LA Review of Books, the Tel Aviv Review, Lidhead, Dead Darlings. She's the founder of Debut Spotlight and the debut editor at A Mighty Blaze. In a former life, she was a hedge fund manager and a spin instructor. So let's talk about Atomic Anna.
Okay.
Atomic Anna is about these 3 extraordinary women. It's in 1986, there's a renowned nuclear scientist, Anna Brakova, who Chernobyl's happening, and all of a sudden she's thrust through time to discover her estranged daughter, Molly, shot in the chest. Molly begs Anna to go back to 1992 to stop Chernobyl and save Molly's daughter, Risa. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, a math prodigy, and to put the future on better footing. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So I want to know, so my first question, I guess, is there's a really interesting origin story where you read something in a newspaper, I believe, about cosmic rays that were actually being investigated on a mountain. What cosmic rays?
I know.
Tell us about it and how it sort of swooped over to Chernobyl.
I know. So, well, the meltdown at Chernobyl, that disaster was really look at that, thank you, was really the very first massive, event that I remembered from my childhood. And it was the first thing that really said to me, grown-ups can really mess up. They can really have accidents, right? And kill thousands and millions of people. And I just remember it, right? I'm a little girl and I'm sitting there back in the days when you had to sit in front of the TV and right for the 6 o'clock news or whatever and watch these images and just being horrified. And so I've always thought about Chernobyl. It's always been with me as this moment. And then I read about the cosmic ray stations that the Soviet Union built. These are absolutely real. There's one in particular on Mount Aragats in Armenia. I know. It's unbelievable.
Does it work? Do they work?
Yeah, there's still a guy up there. There's one, maybe 2 people. I mean, these ancient computers from like the 80s, right? They take up an entire room and they have the computing power of like, a calculator today. but they're still there. Yeah, and they built this to study cosmic rays, right? The energy that's coming down through the atmosphere to see if they could harness it, understand it. What are cosmic rays? What can we do with them? But it's this elaborate, amazing complex. And there were some photo essays done by the National Geographic. Toby Smith has done the best photos I've ever seen. The Guardian has an amazing, amazing photo essay on it, and the New York Times. And just reading about this place, this bizarre place, I thought, I have to set a book there. And it has to be related to Chernobyl, because Chernobyl was such a disaster, but something freaky happened that day. Freaky on a level that I couldn't understand. And something freaky is happening at that cosmic ray station. And I don't know, they mixed together in my head and out came Atomic Anna.
Wow. Okay, so Laura Rossi, your publicist and my brilliant publicist and a Mighty Blade's brilliant publicist, has a great
All the
question. I
love.
have to ask you about your grandmother and growing up. And the second part is, what do you think your grandmother would think about the masterpiece, Atomic Anna?
Well, so I think what Lara is probably talking about is so I grew up with grandparents on one side who had come from Russia and a great aunt.
Ah,
And when I was the eldest in my family, and every Friday they would come for Shabbat dinner for the Sabbath, and they would call me over, my great aunts, because my grandmother actually died when I was very young, and they would be like, Rachel, come over.
right.
Right. And I would have to bend down because they were a lot smaller than me. And then they would say, do you know where the passports are? Do you know where the emergency money is? Because you're going to have to run. You feel safe in
Wow.
America. We ran from Russia. You're going to have to run. And, so they hated the Soviet Union. I was not allowed to go. I was not allowed to speak Russian. We weren't allowed to talk about that. So, I've always had that in my head. And that's why my books are there, I guess, because I wasn't allowed to talk about it. I've always been obsessed with it.
My great grandmother actually escaped the czar, and she would never talk about it. And I
Yeah.
remember when I was in high school, for some reason, my little working class high school offered Russian, and the parents were all up in arms because, like, oh, Russia's evil. But I remembered how much I loved the language, and I still love the language. I love the way it sounds. But so anyway, what you obviously have a science background, and I wanted to talk about the time travel in the novel because there's time travel figures in a lot of different novels. The Time Traveler's Wife, Emma Straub has one coming out, Emily St. John Mandel. But your time travel is so strictly scientifically based. I have to tell you, I've been like I actually grabbed my husband this morning and said, I have to tell you, think of time as a spaghetti, cooked spaghetti. And that's how it is explained in your novel. And that is what I love because it makes the fantastic seem really real. So I want to know about the research you did. What's I know your imagination went out in some places, but it seems like it's very scientifically based. Do you believe time travel can happen, or do you believe it has happened?
I definitely believe in time travel. I think it will happen one day. I mean, I think that our human ability, I have faith in our human ability and to do things. Like, there's some weird stuff out there that you can do with science. But I mean, in all seriousness, it's pretty, there's some pretty big questions, pretty big research being done,
Right.
that I bring forward, and this idea, right, of unified field theory. And there are things that we can't explain. And I love that idea. I'm so fascinated with that idea of using science, like, to show maybe this actually is possible. I mean, I love some
Yeah.
sci-fi that goes out, with crazy ideas that are based in made up science. And I think that can be really fun too. But I specifically love basing it in a what if, right? What
Yes.
if we could just push this a little bit further?
Yeah, and there's that whole line, which is very I like to read a lot of quantum physics for the lay person, and there was a line in the novel about how the past, the present, and the future are all occurring at the same time,
Yes, that's
and
Einstein.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that so much. I want a T-shirt with that on it. But I think
Yes.
that, you know what, with all science is just so interesting and amazing that you really don't need all this weird conspiracy theories and
Yeah.
other kinds of stuff because there's so much in science.
Yeah, and you think this kind of stuff is really far off, but then I was reading. So I still like finance. I love cryptocurrency, and I read this daily newsletter from Robinhood where I do some crypto trading. And they had this little fun fact in there a few weeks ago, and it said something like since 2001 or 2000, there's been at least one human up in the space station, for like continuously.
Wow,
So there's always like already we have the point where they're not all humans are on Earth for the past 20 years. Sure,
that's
they're in the space
incredible.
station, but that's kind of a mind-blowing little tidbit, right?
It's a mind-blowing little tidbit. How does having been a hedge fund manager influence your writing at all? What skills translate from one to the other?
Yeah, so I actually love what I learned in trading stocks in that when you trade stocks, you're up or you're down at the end of the day, at the end of the quarter, and everybody knows you lost a lot of money, you made money, right? Then they'll tell you
It's
like
paper, it's like monopoly money at that point, isn't it?
no, no, it's
No?
real. It's
It's
very
real.
real.
Okay.
And they'll tell you like, you suck, or you did terrible, or great job, you're on top of the world, right? So it just sort of criticism, you learn to just let that roll off your back in the sense of then the next day the market opens and you can start again. Right? You can sell whatever you lost, you can rebuy. So when people, when I'm doing all these early drafts that I've talked to you about in the past that you were so inspirational with, and people will say, or my editor will say, I just don't think this character is working. Fine, cut the character. Or if I get the comment, start on page 72. Fine, cut page 71 and
Right.
forward, right? Like I don't take it personally. It doesn't bother me. I
Right.
just let it go. And I know some people find that really strange all the
No,
time, but I
I
really have no problem with it because I guess I just learned that sort of tough
I
skin
think
or something, thick skin, just let it
also
go.
that's being a real pro because, as a writer, you wanna, like, if something's not working, you wanna push and make it fit in. I wanna talk about the comic book element because I just loved it. Molly starts drawing these comic books, and they have such a feminist bent because it's a female hero, Atomic Anna. But these comics also operate as science because there are clues in them for Molly's daughter, Rachel. Is that how you pronounce her name? Rachel?
Raisa,
Her,
yeah.
okay, for Molly's daughter, Rachel, to find. So it's all in kind of this loop. What do you know about comics? How did you find out more? And I just want to know how this all came about because it's just wonderful. It's just so wonderful. It made me love your characters so much. Let's
Oh,
talk
this is
about
like the
comics.
dream question. I mean, I did not serve it up to you, but if you had asked me, I would have been like, please ask me about the comics.
Oh,
So
yeah,
thank
oh, the
you.
comics are like and also you've been drawing some. I saw some, or somebody else drew
Not
some. I
me.
saw
I don't draw
not you.
them. Yes. I'll
Oh,
tell you.
they're
So
incredible.
yeah. So the women's comics movement, right, which was women's with a Y, not an E, and comics with an
Okay.
X, really, was like in the heart of the 70s. We're in the heart of the second wave of feminism, right? Shirley Chisholm, right? Bella Abzug. We have, Gloria Steinem, like all these amazing feminists, right? We're pushing for universal childcare. This is the heart of the women's movement, which I adore and love that moment. And women's
Yeah.
comics were right at the center of that. And Trina Robbins was one of these figures who was pushing, right, to show women changing what we are in the world, right? Coming out, we're going to work, we're going to vote, we're going to have our own bank accounts, we're going to, right, be ourselves, right? And I love that moment in feminism. And I wanted to capture that and I wanted to bring that in through the comics for that reason. Also, because I love the idea that some people see the world in terms of numbers. They'll define a space in terms of equations. And some people will see it in terms of light and dark and color. And so I got the chance to sort of put that all together with comics. I mean, people don't talk about how important comics were to women's movement, to second wave feminism, right? It was a huge, they went hand in hand. And I wanted to bring that back into the, sort of the conversation and get us started on that again.
Well, it's
So
wonderful. I actually have a first edition of the number one comic of Miss Marvel, I believe is the name of
no
it. I
way.
have it in my I do, I do. I don't know
Oh
how I
my
got it, but
God.
it's incredible. I have it in my file cabinet back there,
You
and I
better.
love it because
Yeah.
she's strong and she's fierce and she's incredible. I also want to say in terms of the comics that it brings the whole element of another story world. So we have the past, we have the future, we have the present, we have Russia, we have America, and we have the comic world.
Yes.
And I just thought it was just incomparably done. But also, the comics are very much character development of Molly. We see her, this girl discovering comics and how much they mean to her. And because we love her so, so much, we love the whole idea of her getting involved in the comics. And the comics become very, very important. I just thought it was brilliantly done.
Thank
So
you.
you just said something that I want to ask about too, which is there was a line that you were talking about numbers, and there was a line in the book about how math is a language. It's
Yeah.
not numbers. And when I read that, I thought, oh my God, that's right. Nobody ever thinks about that, that math is really a beautiful thing with a language all its own. And it isn't just, if a train is going 10 miles this way, another one is going 15 miles, when will they crash? Can you talk about that a little bit, please? How
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that the language?
I mean, it is different people see the world in different ways and understand it and can communicate it and interact with it in different ways, right? And so thinking of numbers and symbols as sentences, right? And big, long ideas. So I love that idea. So Einstein himself started in philosophy, right? And he started with big questions. What is time? And he was very famously
Right.
working in the patent examiner's office, working on machines to synchronize clocks because they were trying to figure out how to run train schedules, right, for the first time back in 1914, 1910, right? Like, how do you do that? You need to have clocks. You need to agree on the time in one city to the other. So you need a machine to do that. And so Einstein comes up with the idea of light. He says, all these machines I'm seeing are wrong. They're not going to work, but let's use light. It's a constant. So then he has to take this idea and translate it into math so that he can prove it and other people can understand it. And that idea like blows my mind, right? Because I can talk about it in the words and the philosophy. What is time? How do we measure it? But he was the first for like that I understood when someone was saying, let's take this idea of light as a constant and translate it into words, into equations to show that this is how we're going to synchronize clocks or, then he gets into relativity and I don't understand all those equations and
I
how he
was
does
just going
it.
to ask you, could you do, because I remember my son was learning chemistry and I was thought like, oh, I want to learn these mathematical equations. And I could not.
Yeah, no.
Just
But
like,
I can appreciate
but I
that that's
appreciate it.
how
It's
it's a
fascinating.
language, right? Yes, and so when I would read about Einstein being in a room with all these scientists and talking about relativity, and they're looking on a chalkboard back then with the equations, they're literally it's like you're translating Latin for me because I took Latin, right? And where you would go through
Mhm.
and say, word by word and parse the sentence and figure like that's actually what these mathematicians and scientists were doing. And so that just was like, I've got to write about that. I want to explain that to
I
other
loved it.
people.
I loved it. I have the hardback edition. I have the ARC, and I've been actually underlining things in the ARC because there's so much science in it. It's so fabulous. Speaking of science, there's a very moral thread in the book about what science can do and what science should do.
Yeah.
Anna built the bomb. She's
Yes.
desperate to stop Chernobyl. So it's always a problem with science. There are things we can do. We can probably clone our dead. We can probably clone children. We can probably live forever. But these things we can do, should we? I mean, should we download our brains into machines? How can we, if we reach a point where we say, okay, we shouldn't do that for moral reasons, how do we stop the intense curiosity that we have about all these things? I mean, it's an intense conversation for Anna and for Molly and for her daughter, Risa.
Yeah.
Talk
And
about
for us,
that.
I
And
feel
for
like,
us,
right?
and for us.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you're bringing this up because I wish that all science were now starting with these ethical questions. I mean, it's very real. Should you be able to choose, the genes that your child will
Right,
inherit, right?
right,
Are
right,
you going, right? Designer babies, I think is, right? So
right.
you will
Designer, but
choose.
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, should you be we can probably do that, should we? Seems
Yeah,
very
should
wrong.
we? What does it mean if we do it? I mean,
Right.
it's such a slippery slope, but it's so interesting because the other thing about Anna is when she starts out, it's almost like she could have two roads she can go on, sort of like Dante's Inferno. One road is she's going to devote her life to science. Like it's really important for her to fix Chernobyl, to do the science, but on the other end is her family. And in the beginning of the novel, science comes first,
Yeah.
but things sort of change. And I found that so completely interesting, partly because, well, first of all, the scientists I know are the most humane, wonderful people on the planet. So Anna is definitely, and I was wondering if part of her dilemma is that being female, because female, you're sort of expected to be a mother and stay at home and be nurturing. um she doesn't have that much leeway as, say, a male scientist could. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we see men all the time who will put work first, who are working, 18 hours a day while they have a partner at home who is cooking or,
Right.
organizing, driving or whatever activities for kids or the family life. And when women want to be in that role, it's always frowned upon or the family falls apart, which is really what I show happening. But I think
Yeah,
that we should recognize and celebrate the fact that women want that too.
they
There's
want
no
that
reason a
too.
woman shouldn't be able to work 20, 18 hours a day, right? And put
That's
that
right.
as the priority. And that's what Anna is. And I think a lot of people find her to be very cold. They don't like
Oh my,
her.
really?
Yeah,
I don't think so at all. I
thank
mean,
you.
I loved her. She was so, first of all, I love the way her mind worked.
Thank
Second of
you.
all, what I found fascinating is how she was smart enough and human enough to change the way she needed to.
Yeah,
She felt that her sacrifices were going to benefit her kids. So it wasn't as if she
exactly.
felt like she didn't care about them.
Right, well, I
And
mean, if a man is working 18 hours a day, he also
nobody
would
says
say
anything.
no one says
Nobody says
anything, and he'll
anything.
say it's because I'm providing for my family, and that's
No,
what Anna's doing, and so I wanted to point that out, and I wanted to show a woman doing that, and a woman being that involved in her work and that devoted to it, and it's actually a harder character to write than you think in that sense.
oh, and you know what else? It's sort of, she's, I don't want to give away the ending, but there's a transformation there, and it's so satisfying and so wonderful to see. I mean, all of these women are complex. They're not all good girls. I mean, Molly has a drug problem, which she deals with, and Risa has her own problem. I mean, they're complicated, fully fledged women, and that's what makes the book so wonderful. All the characters are just sublime.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Let's see. I asked this.
But I do
Oh
wanna say
yeah.
one other thing is I didn't wanna
Mhm.
make just to be clear to anybody listening, right? The resolution with Anna is not that she realizes she needs to be at home with her kids
No, no,
and
no,
her
no, no, no.
family.
It
That
isn't.
is
No, it isn't.
not
You're right.
it, right? But that you can find a way, right? It just as a man doesn't have to spend 18 to 20 hours,
Right.
right? There's another way. I just tried to cast her as the person in the family who wanted to put work as a priority. And how do you do that when
Hmm.
when you are the woman in the relationship, the
Hmm.
mother, the matriarch?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me see. Right. Okay. There's also a really moral question of how do we stop evil? Anna's building a bomb to stop Hitler,
Right.
but
And you
there's
can't argue with
still a
that, right? Like,
right, but
let's
there's
stop.
still a bomb. Or when we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it stopped the war, but at what cost?
Yeah.
It's sort of, do you believe that this is inherent? This is something that is in our biology that we have to somehow face and fight? Do you have any answers to this? I
Mhm.
mean,
I mean, that is a big question. I
yeah.
wish I did, but I certainly, I struggle with this question as I wrote this book and still now. So if you want to build a nuclear bomb to stop Hitler, I can't argue with that, right? Or
Right.
you want to go back in time to stop the Chernobyl disaster from happening because you want to save all those people. How could you say that's a bad thing? And yet,
Right.
look at what you have to do and sacrifice and how many people you will hurt by
Right.
building that bomb or by
Right.
going back in time. So, right? Like, should you actually do it? Is there another
I
way?
I don't know, but that's what's so fascinating about the book, because it makes you, I'm still thinking about it. It really makes you think, what is the right thing to do, and how do you cope with it? I mean, if the right thing to do is to murder somebody like
Excuse me.
Hitler, bless you. If the right thing is to murder Hitler, then how do you live with yourself knowing that you killed another human being, even
Yeah.
though that human being was evil? It's a
Or
very
someone else is
thorny
going to come
question.
along just like Hitler.
Just like him, or it might be worse,
Yeah.
or things might be worse. Um, I want to ask about what surprised you about the writing of this novel, because it was so I can't imagine there weren't a million surprises, because the novel is so intricate and just so beautifully. I just want to tell everybody out there, this novel, it's like a textbook for writers because it's so seamlessly organized. The writing is just so wonderful. So what surprised you while you were doing this?
Um, I think that the complexity of keeping track of dates, I spent a
Right.
lot of time on that. And, because like I knew that readers, my editor, everyone would really hold me to the fire to that. And as they should, right? But that was very hard. If you shift 1 month or 1 year in one section, because it's time travel and there's so many sections in the book, right? It just would go through the whole thing. And so I'd be like, oh, I'll just make, Anna 1 year younger. But then I had to make, 50
Right.
changes in the manuscript or something. So that
Did you
was really
sep
hard.
did you separately do everybody's timeline? Because it goes back and forth and back and forth.
No, so I used spreadsheets, I used Excel, and I had sort
Okay.
of a master one that went chronologically so that I knew day by day, right? So that in a sense separates it because their lives start, they exist separately in some spots, or Anna did for sure. And then
I
I had, more for
okay.
following the book.
I wanted to talk about the value of art and how it impacts real life. Atomic Anna comics. I so wish you would make them and produce them.
Oh, I have
Anyway,
to tell you about my project.
oh, okay. Let me ask the question first, then you to the
Okay.
project. Okay. Atomic Anna comics certainly have this function because people say, oh, comic book. But
Yeah.
these Atomic Anna comic books in the novel virtually save lives and
Yeah.
save the world. And
Yeah.
this novel, with all its moral questions, sort of does the same. So, my question about this was I wanted you to talk about the value of art and what you wanted people to take away from the book. But I also want to hear about your project. So tell
Okay,
us about
so okay, so first, Atomic Anna, right? That we've got the comic book. That is the name of the comic book that Molly imagines and dreams up. And I guess I put the book to bed, right? When it goes off to the printer, we're done copy edits, everything, and I'm sitting around, and I was like, one thing that I would really love to do is, make these comics. How awesome would that be? And then I
that.
started talking to Kelly Sue DeConnick, who is this huge woman in comics right now. She has tons of followers, tons of amazing comics. And she has a project called Visible Women. And so I got in touch with her because, of course, I need to have a woman drawing these comics,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I want to hold up new artists because I love new writers, right? I do debut spotlight for new writers. I want to debut artists. So she helped me. She has this amazing database. So I started pouring through and I found these artists that I loved, Angela Wu and Emily Ree. And I, wrote to them, proposed this project that they would draw these covers and my characters. And they were all in. They were so excited. And so now I have all these amazing comics, right? So I sent them all the descriptions that I had written in the book of my characters and what I thought they would do. And they drew them. And Hachette, Grand Central, my publisher, loves them too. And now they're using them for marketing and promotion. And it's just been amazing.
Are there going to be clues? Are there going to be clues from Raisa in the comics?
No, but
Oh, shoot.
I'm so happy for the artists now too, because they're getting a lot more
Wonderful.
attention, and my publisher's excited for them. People are, their little requests coming in for the graphic novels and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
That's amazing. We're going to open it up to questions now. Laura has another question. She wants to know what genre would you say this book is? Because it's really, you can't really say it's sci fi. It's definitely literary fiction, but it's also sort of thrilling and it's also speculative. Um,
I don't
So
know.
what
I
do
mean,
you
I just
think?
call it fiction. It's funny because
Fiction.
I don't call it sci-fi. I mean, there's a time machine in it, but really the book is about love and relationships, right? And family and big juicy questions like just because we can doesn't mean we should. So, I don't know. I think I like to see it in the fiction, the fiction aisle. But some
I
people have
think
been
it
calling
is.
it sci-fi.
Oh, I don't know, but I just thought it was that weird space where you feel this is absolutely real. This is absolutely real. It's absolutely happening now. Is this going to be translated into Russian?
I hope. We'll see. We'll see.
That would be amazing. I have one of my books was translated into Russian. It's my favorite thing ever just to look at the cover and say, wow. Okay, so get those questions in, people. If you have them, put them in the chat. No question is, Laura said, literary fiction is her bet. Okay, let's see what else. What's obsessing you now and why that you can talk about? That's what I always ask. It's a classic
What is
question.
obsessing me right now? Well, right now I'm having very bad allergies. This very
Oh,
moment.
okay.
I'm not sick. It's allergies. But I spend a lot of time looking into I'm super excited about Justice Jackson's right to
Yes,
confirmation yesterday. That was
yes.
huge. I spend a lot of time reading news. I don't know what is obsessing me. I wish I had a really good
You can make
uh
something up.
I know. Time travel is obsessing me. I'll tell you that is the truth because everybody is asking me at least 12 times a day, where would you go if you could time travel?
Well, where would you go? I mean, I think about that all the time, and I think I want to go in the future. I don't want to change the past. I want to see what's happening in the future.
I would love that too. But you know what? So I've been thinking so much about this because I used to think, okay, I don't actually want to time travel because I don't want to mess anything up and I'm happy where I am. But then I was thinking, what if I could go back to the moment like my grandparents, right, got on the boat or right or to a
Wow.
conversation somewhere in my family where they were sitting in a room and said it's time to run. How amazing would that be? Right?
That would be totally amazing.
But I wouldn't want to
Totally.
interact. Like I'd just sort of be, right, the fly in the wall.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it would be weird if you go in the future. I would want to go far away enough so that my future self was not there. I just want to see how's my son doing? What are my grandkids doing? Is there
Yes.
even an Earth yet? All that kind of stuff. Julie, thank you for the question. What was the hardest thing about writing this book, and what was the easiest thing? Again, let's look at the gorgeous, gorgeous cover.
Thank you. Yes, I know, I love it. The cover
Are
was
you gonna,
easy.
are you going to have T-shirts made of this? Because I would buy one. It's a
Thank
beautiful
you. I
cover.
hadn't thought about it yet. Um, okay, so the hardest thing that I really struggled with the most was the opening for this book. And I think that I
Oh,
wrote
yeah.
about, I'm not exaggerating, probably 30 different openings.
Wait, I'm opening up to the opening. Right. This seems like the perfect opening to me. It's
The
exactly where you want to start.
the
Well,
prologue, right,
yeah,
right
where
where she
she
rips through
jumps
time.
on. Where
Yeah,
she jumps on.
yeah.
Where else could you have started that?
I mean, so actually, the second to last scene in the whole book is the very first one that I wrote. And this is when Anna
Oh,
goes back and visits her own mother on the day that her mother disappears.
right. Right.
And so that's where I thought the book would start, and then it would be linear from there. But that didn't work. That was just boring. No one liked that. And so I kept rewriting and rewriting, and that was just really hard. And then the easiest character and the easiest part to write was Raisa and the math contest.
Oh, I
That
love her.
scene just like boom, boom, boom.
She was the little math prodigy. That was she was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to know how you started as a writer. I mean, what made you decide, you know what? I'm not going to be a hedge fund manager anymore. I'm going to be a writer. Did you write as a kid?
Oh my God. So, first of all, I have always been writing and always wanted to be a writer. I took
Oh,
every creative writing class I could in college. My dream, I wanted to be a writer. But then I sat down and looked at the salary, right? And then looked at my student loans.
yeah.
Yes, and looked at my student loans and I couldn't do it. There was no way. But so while I was in finance, like in business school, literally like, and at night I'm running my fund instead of reading, earnings reports, I'm writing books and querying. So I have like 4 novels that I wrote before Ben and the Stars came out, maybe 5 that are in the drawer. So I have always
Wow,
been writing. This is not new. I just finally sold a book. Now sold a second book, right? And now I'm doing it full time.
that
So
is
it's not new.
wonderful.
It's not like, I feel
Wow,
like some people think it's over. They look at you, what's the famous line about overnight success? But yeah, it's taken me,
right.
40 years to get here. And like how many
Mhm.
books in the drawer?
That's incredible. That's absolutely. So when you're writing, do you have people who look at your pages, or do you wait until you're and then just give it to your agent or your editor, or how does that work for you?
So I have an amazing writing group. I took the 1 year novel incubator program at Grub Street. I'm still very close to them and a lot of people in that program. And so I give them pages first. And they're amazing because they'll read it and they'll say, this is not working. Or this character is really good. Pull her out and dump everything else, or whatever
That's
it
the
is.
that's the scariest thing to do, to learn to show your pages and to listen to the criticism without, like, immediately saying, "Screw you," keeping it the way it is,
It
and
doesn't bother
realizing, "Yeah,
me.
you're right." It's wonderful that it doesn't bother you. I'm getting better about it. I really am getting better about it because you have to. You have
Yeah.
to. Oh, we have another question. Great. Thank you, Shelley Bird. Anna travels to the future. Oh, she said, "Is there gonna be a sequel?" And seriously, can you hint about what you're working on next?
Oh, that's like a beautiful teed up question. So no, I don't have any plans for a sequel for Atomic Anna. Of course, like if the sales go crazy and lots of people are demanding, I have tons of ideas. I'm sure you probably feel this way too, Caroline. Like you love your characters, you know them so well. Of course I could keep going with them for another 1,000
Well,
pages.
yeah, I know what they yeah, but it's weird. Don't you find it weird when people say, "Well, what are they doing now?" And you're saying, "Well, I don't know, they're eating cupcakes."
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
Do you wanna talk about your next book at all? Some writers don't like to do that, but some writers
Yeah.
do.
So I will just say that I'm working on a story that is a novel that is set sort of around 9/11 and the World Trade Center and what happened down there. So we will see. We will see how that comes together.
Well, from what we talked about before we got on here, I think it's another genius idea. Laura wants to know, when is the movie or limited series? That's actually a great idea. I can't
Yes.
imagine that this wouldn't be a great limited series with 3 strong roles for great women.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. So my agents at William Morris are working very hard to sell this, and it is, on submission all over Hollywood right now. So if
Uh,
anybody's listening and knows someone who wants to make this movie, let me know. Limited series. That's what I want to
well,
do.
all I wanna say is that if you have any waitresses, any rude waitresses in the limited series, I wanna be the rude waitress. Okay, we have time for one last question if somebody would like to ask it. Okay, otherwise, then I'm going to ask Rachel the last question, which is, was there any question I didn't ask that you'd like to talk about or say anything about?
um, I would like to know from you how you I would like to know how you just you like encourage so many authors, right? Like how are you such a great mentor? How do you find all these amazing writers that you want to mentor and help?
You know what it was? It was because I didn't have a lot of help when I was starting out at first. In fact, I had a lot of people who were the opposite of helpful. And when I reached my lowest point, I just said, you know what? I'm going to just make my own rules and I'm going to be nice to everyone and I'm going to help other people. And that's just what I did. I did all this stuff that you weren't supposed to do. I just contacted writers and said, hi. And I just feel like writing is so hard and we're all swimming in the same ocean. There's sharks there, there's box jellyfish, there's giant squid. We have to keep everybody afloat.
Yeah.
Everybody
I
has
just
to
love
hold
it.
on.
You're such an
Thank
inspiration
you.
that way, and I feel like I try to emulate that all the time, because you have done so much for me, pulling me up and helping me along, and I always try to pay it forward. I always think about you when other writers come to me and say, "Can you help? Do you have advice?" Right? "Can you blurb?"
Well,
What's
let's turn the
Caroline do?
conversation.
What was
Let's turn the conversation back to the real star. Rachel, Atomic Anna. Go to your local indie bookstore. You can also get this at bookshop.org. You want this book. I swear, you want this book. It is one of these books where I started reading it and I did not stop. In fact, I read it twice because I read it first in the galley and then I thought, well, I should read it again for to make up questions. And the second time was even better than the first. It's genius. It's just absolutely.
And you gave me a beautiful blurb.
I did. I gave her a beautiful blurb because the book just blew me away.
Right there.
Blew me away.
Right on the back.
So thank you everybody for being here. Buy the book. Buy the book. And Rachel, thank you so much. I cannot wait to read what you read next. I'd read your grocery list. And remember, this interview will live live on our YouTube station forever and ever and ever. It's going to be a podcast too, so you can listen to it. And tell your friends, because this book is the real thing. It really is. It's the real deal. It's just.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Mighty Blaze. Such a pleasure to be on the show.
Okay, so goodbye, everybody, and thanks everybody for tuning in, showing up. And last thing I'm going to say before I tune off, Atomic Anna. Okay, let me just bye.